watching all of this unfold. And Jonathan Ruhe of JINSA joins us once again to talk about the latest developments. Jonathan, we appreciate you joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Always good to be back. Thank you for having me.
So it is interesting to see that the U.S., at least for now, has decided to pause attacks on Iran, especially after 13 straight days of escalation. Can you share with us, in terms of the strategy about this particular pause, why it's happening now, and also what the goal is?
Certainly. So I think there's several things coming together to explain the current pause. One is oil prices are back over $100 a barrel, despite the president's efforts to pressure the Iranians. Shipping is still not going through the Strait. Second one is concerns that the U.S. military may be running low on certain stockpiles of both offensive and defensive munitions that have been expended in this fight. We've seen Iran have several successful missile and drone attacks on U.S. installations around the region in the past 2 weeks. So a second concern there is the U.S. needs to surge more of those stocks and other forces to the region. Third one is that Prime Minister Netanyahu is expected to come to Washington this week, and the pause gives an opportunity for the United States and Israel to coordinate what might be next steps. And in terms of those next steps, the final point is Trump has made clear, as you mentioned at the outset, that diplomacy is always intermixed in this. Trump wants to get a deal that he thinks he had in the ceasefire, which is Iran reopens the Strait to shipping. And right now, the Iranians clearly don't think that they have to do that. And so Trump wants to see if maybe there's a chance for diplomacy to get a better deal from the U.S. perspective right now.
And you brought up that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to be traveling to Washington, D.C., meeting with President Trump, talking about those next steps. And I wanted to ask you about that, because what are the critical points that need to be discussed and also agreed upon? We have seen in the recent weeks that there has been a little bit of friction when it comes to Lebanon with Israel targeting, and that has been a red line for Iran because they want to see those attacks ceased. What can you share with us in terms of what needs to be hammered out?
So I think the main concern, and Lebanon is certainly a big one, but I think the main concern right now is directly Iran itself. From the Israeli perspective, there's the desire, if you will, that if Trump is going to do what he says he's going to do and significantly escalate military operations against Iran, broaden the U.S. target set, that Israel would want to have some coordination there, even if they do not actually join the fighting. Specifically from Israel's perspective, and it certainly overlaps with what Trump has said, our U.S. interests here are Iran's nuclear and missile programs, which, as hard hit as they have been in the last couple years over several rounds of conflict, Iran is really showing an amazing ability to dig those out, reconstitute them, and keep fighting with those missiles. And there are, again, concerns that we heard from President Trump recently that Iran's nuclear program, even though he said it was obliterated last year, that it could be reconstituting key parts of that program. And so, for Israel, these are existential issues. Right now, Lebanon and other fronts in the war are certainly important, but I think it will be all about Iran itself in their coming talks.
And I also wanted to talk about the broader view, because it's not just the United States, Israel, and Iran. There's also the Middle Eastern allies of the United States, and they have been on the receiving end of targets of Iran. In particular, there's been a lot of concern over Iran targeting desalination plants, as well as maybe the power grids. Is there a scenario where enough is enough? Because the Middle East allies have fully supported the United States, but is there a situation where that support may wane?
So that's a sort of the million-dollar question in terms of this larger regional picture you described, because as we've seen, Iran is certainly capable of retaliating against U.S. targets in the region, but those targets are obviously on the territory of our friends and partners in the region, and then also targeting the critical infrastructure of those, especially Arab Gulf partners as well. And I think that's certainly a concern which has yet to be addressed or articulated in a U.S. strategy, which is if Trump escalates against some of the targets he says he's going to, like power plants bridges, Iranian critical infrastructure. The concern is that Iran can indeed inflict much greater harm in retaliation. Iran's foreign minister has said they're pursuing an eye for an eye approach right now, which would suggest those are exactly the things they would target. And so that's something that I think we would like to see more of. As an American concerned about these things is clearer coordination with our Arab Gulf partners about what U.S. military strategy is and how they can be helping, because we've certainly seen a lot of these countries, the Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, the Saudis as well, have shown a willingness to get involved in the fight. But as long as Iran sees cracks between those different approaches, they'll be happy to exploit them to our disadvantage.
Now, this conflict, while the strikes from the United States have been put on pause, it has been going on for a little bit. Is there any concern in terms of the weapons supply from the United States?
So I think there's some both immediate concerns which can be addressed. It's largely a matter of the United States moving some of these munitions to the Middle East from other stocks, both here in the continental United States, but also from other theaters, Europe and Asia and elsewhere. And so that certainly takes some time and some logistical coordination. And we've seen in previous breaks in the fighting since Epic Fury started, the U.S. takes advantage of those pauses to surge more munitions into the region, also additional combat aircraft and refuelers, things like that. Obviously, we've also seen Iran take advantage of those pauses to dig out some of its missile sites, reconstitute its own forces for the next round. The more concerning thing here is the longer term issue, which is our defense industrial base cannot keep up with the rate at which we're expending these munitions from conflict to conflict in the Middle East. And that's a bill that's increasingly going to come due when we try to think about not only what does the future of the Middle East look like in 5 years, our ability to deter and fight Iran, but also the same thing as regards China and Russia and other theaters.
And I'm glad that you brought up China and Russia, because they are almost background players when it comes to this. And there have been reports that Iran is in discussions with Russia and China. What can you share with us in terms of what those discussions might entail and how Russia and China factor into what happens in the coming weeks, months, years?
So I think you can draw a little bit of a distinction between Russia and China, at least right now. China seems rather content or maybe concerned that its best position is just to sit on the sidelines. By and large, for now, we've heard some reports that there's Chinese intelligence that's supporting Iranian operations. The Chinese certainly don't want to get involved in anything regarding the Strait of Hormuz, even though it's vitally important to their energy security. I think right now they'd rather more or less sit on the sidelines, maybe play a diplomatic role if it benefits Iran and hurts the United States. But I think we've seen Russia be much more active in supporting Iranian operations. I think a lot of the incredibly effective targeting you've seen Iranian missiles be capable of against U.S. forces in the region, that's certainly with Russian assistance. And Russia also has a direct supply line to Iran through the Caspian Sea, that while we've seen certain targeting of those supply routes, especially by Israel earlier in the conflict, that's still a relatively easy access route for the Russians to get to Iran, although we've heard recently now that Ukraine has been threatening that supply route as well. So Russia right now is much more actively engaged, I think, on the Iranian side of the conflict, which stems in part from Russia's abiding desire to undermine the United States all over the world, but also is a little more acute now because of the support, first of all, that Iran has been giving to Russia for drones and missiles to target Ukraine, but also Russia is looking for payback because of the absolute pounding they've been taking at Ukraine's hands, and Ukraine is obviously supported to varying extents by the West and the United States.
All right, so it's going to be very interesting to see how this all unfolds. Jonathan, as always, we appreciate you joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Always happy to join you. Thank you.
All right, and I also wanted to share this. This is with Reuters journalist Phil Stewart, who says that U.S. President Trump has paused attacks on Iran to allow more room for diplomacy. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, speaking to Fox News, Mike Waltz, is saying earlier today he's giving talks some space. He's giving it a little bit of room.